Character creation is a game of choices, and D&D gives you a lot of them, with 20 published books all containing different player options, from little things like backgrounds and new species, to new feats, subclasses, and new spells to choose from. It can feel like anything is possible. But there aren't infinite characters. If you follow the rules of the game, there's a lot of options, but there's also a lot of restrictions. You can only take certain things in certain circumstances. There's a lot of prerequisites and limitations. How many possible permutations of D&D characters are there? That's what I have spent the last month diving into. How many possible characters can you create in D&D at level 1? So first, some assumptions. No amount of time could possibly get you all the different versions of a character, so I had to draw some limitations. No homebrew, no, counting reflavoring as different options, right? It's just mechanical choices. And also, I needed to rule out equipment. Because equipment and inventory is so varied and there's so many different options available, and the thing about equipment is it changes so easily. Even something like what weapon you are using, you can swap out at a moment's notice, right? As often as an interaction during combat. And so all the different permutations of the different items that could be in your inventory, the different things you could be equipped or wearing, possible magic items, it's just too much to calculate. So we are stripping equipment out. Likewise, we're not looking at weapons proficiencies or armor proficiencies or things like that. And we aren't looking at like tool proficiencies or instruments or any artisan tools. We're also not doing languages or any other qualities of your character that are likely to vary over the course of like minute by minute or hour by hour. Another guideline is starting stats. This is really hard to calculate because there are so many different methods of calculating starting statistics. If you wanted like the most simple, I could take a standard array. If we wanted to do, if we wanted the most popular, we could do rolling for the stats, but then that's a huge range and you're not really in control of it. We could do point buy to be methodical, and that's the one I use most on my channel. The problem is this is not just a consideration in terms of how many possible different starting stats could you have. We could do that math. It's also going to impact our multi-classing down the line when I make videos about level 2, level 3, level 4. It's going to impact whether we can take certain feats, like the Skulker or the Grappler feat that have prerequisites. In all, what I'm going to do for starting stats is I'm going to say, you rolled and you got these stats. And yes, that's not the most realistic or powerful set of statistics you can use, but it makes everything I'm doing so much simpler, and I'm going to need that, and you'll see why. I also calculated skill proficiencies as a whole. What this means is I did not consider whether or not a given skill would already have a proficiency when choosing from a different source. So, if your background has given you history and survival, and your species gives you an automatic nature proficiency, and then your class lets you choose 2 out of 7, realistically, probably 3 out of those 7 have been taken, right? But I'm still doing 7 choose 2, which is 21, for the options on that class. So that's what I mean by taking them as a whole. This will overcount on the skills, because we're going to have lots of permutations that take the same proficiency twice. However, given that we are ignoring some other sources of variability, I think that comes out in the wash. Let's get started. So, chronologically, when you're born, you already have your species, or your lineage, so we're going to start with that. There are something like 160 species options available for player characters to create. I say something like because it depends on certain assumptions about how you're calculating these. A lot of species get reprinted with very minor changes in different books. If there was any change, I went ahead and counted them double, so there are like 2 satyrs, there's 2 centaurs, there's 2 bugbears, and 2 whatever. There's lots of named species that are counted multiple times. Then, there are about a dozen species or so that give you a selection when you choose it. Either of a skill proficiency or of a spell, like the Astral Elf or the High Elf, or unless you choose a cantrip. There's also creatures like the Dragonborn, where you choose your affinity, whether that's chromatic or metallic, gem, and then the different colors within those. There's multiple types of Dragonborn that have this choice, so there's a lot of Dragonborn represented. There's also a lot of Tieflings that have kind of various abilities amongst them. And Aasimar, where you've got your Protector and Fallen, whatever, and then 3 other types of Aasimar, and then another type of Aasimar that has the 3 abilities, and you can kind of choose each time. So those are all factored in there. The heavy hitters, though, of course, are the variant human and the custom lineage, because we have to solve feats before we can solve how many options these provide. So let's talk about feats, put a pin in lineage. For feats, there are 83 feats that are available at level 1. The majority of these have no additional choices, which is great. But things like Artificer Initiate, Martial Adept, Metamagic Adept, Magic Initiate, etc., bring you into a new set of options. The biggest of these by far is Magic Initiate, which has you choose one of 5 classes and then choose 2 cantrips from their spell lists and a first level spell from their spell list. Now, because it specifies that you must use the casting stat of the class that you've selected, even if 2 classes have similar spell lists and you choose the same spells off each, it can make a mechanical difference which class you chose initially. So I calculated all of these permutations independently and arrived at a number of 1,433 possible Magic Initiate permutations. This is the most complex feat, but there are a lot of others that go through several layers and are in the hundreds of options. One thing I want to note is Martial Initiate, which allows you to choose a fighting style, can allow you to choose Superior Technique, which allows you to select a Battle Master maneuver. There's also a feat that allows you to choose 2 Battle Master maneuvers on your own. So even a custom human who is looking for a Battle Master maneuver has multiple ways of getting there through the feats. Once all of these are taken into consideration, and also taking into account skills, so like Skilled and Skill Expert and Prodigy, I had to use an assumption for how many proficiencies you had to select for the expertise for some of these. I went ahead and assumed you would have 5 skill proficiencies, 2 from background, potentially 3 from your class, and no assumptions about the race, because obviously we're talking about variant human and custom lineage that wouldn't have any skill proficiencies. So 5 options for expertise. The biggest of these, of course, was Skilled, which lets you choose 3 skills of the 18 to get proficiency in. 18 choose 3 is 816 possibilities, which is a pretty heavy hitter. Now, this is where some of our skill double counting comes in, but remember, Skilled also allows you to take tool proficiencies we're not calculating. So I think on balance, this is about the right number of options. Tons of feats let you choose in which stat to put your +1 in, either amongst 2 or 3 or even all 6 options. These all count as different choices for character creation, so all of those get factored in. Adding up all the different permutations of feats gets us to 5,584 options. But we can't use that number because of prerequisite. The variant human can't use any feats with a racial prerequisite unless it is human, like Prodigy. We also can't be double counting the feats that require a background because we'll be multiplying this number by our backgrounds later on. So what I've gone ahead and done is removed all of the feats that require a specific background, and we'll go ahead and add that in as a lump sum later so that it's not double counting. This means that for the purposes of our custom lineage and variant human, we're not going to be counting those feats. In all, this means we're subtracting 80 or so options from the variant human. Many of the ones with a racial prerequisite don't have additional choices beyond that, so that's why that number is so small. So the variant human is getting approximately 5,500 options. Custom lineage is tricky because does it qualify as an orc or a tiefling or anything else? Like, does it meet the species criteria for these feats? What about human? Does it count as a human for like Prodigy and any other feats like that? I said no. I know plenty of DMs who would say yes. If your custom lineage includes you being an elf, they might let you qualify for elf feats. But I just thought that that was a little bit cheating, and not all DMs might allow something like that. So anything that had a racial prerequisite, I removed from custom lineage, but custom lineage lets you choose whether or not you have dark vision. So we're going to take that number and double it, because those are the number of permutations that custom lineage allows. So now that we've solved feats, we plug that into our species list, we add them all together, and we get to 16,709 options for your species choices. Now we can do a quick scan of backgrounds. A few of them have you make a couple of selections. We add those together. We're going to get 273 different background options. So we're going to go ahead and multiply 16,703 or 16,709 by 273 to get 4,561,557 options before we get to class selection. That's just about 500,000 options. Going on to class, some classes like the Warlock and the Cleric get their subclass choice at first level. The Fighter gets a fighting style, and lots of spellcasting classes are choosing their spell lists here at first level. Adding up each of these options, it's clear that spell selection is the heavy hitter on this list. If we did not count spell selection, we would have a much, much, much lower number. There are three classes, the Barbarian, the Monk, and the Paladin, whose only options at first level are those like skill proficiencies that they're choosing, so that's kind of nice, makes things easier. Looking at all the class choices, we have, for first level class options, 8,187,874,787 options. I should note, 75% of those options are wizards, because the wizard has such a big spell list that those permutations grow exponentially with the number of spell options. So you have way more wizard options than any other class. So to get our first level possible characters, we're going to multiply our 4,561,000 by the 8,187,000,000 class options, and that gets us 37,349,500,000,000 and change character options at level 1. Remember, even though we are double counting some spells with like Magic Initiate and then also choosing a spell list, some skills from these different like things, we are ignoring the possibility of starting stat variation, different equipments, languages, and tool proficiencies. So on balance, there are probably a lot more characters than this that are possible at first level. Even just factoring whether you use a short sword or a long sword, that doubles this, right? And it's only some percentage that are double counting in the total. So that is an enormous number of character options available to you with just your first level choices. That's going to be the video for today, but if you guys like the video, I will do a series where I tackle levels 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then proceed all the way to 20 for the total number of D&D characters that are possible all the way up until those levels. Now, surely, a lot of these characters are going to be the same character with like a 1 stat point difference from choosing something different with a feat. Like a lot of them will be, and I do get that. But it's still kind of cool to see just the enormous amount of variability. I mean, 37 quadrillion is more characters than will ever be created across all Dungeons & Dragons games for all of history, right? So, and that's just for the level 1 options. It's really, really incredible to see. I hope you guys have enjoyed a little trip through the math with me, and I will see you guys next week with another class ranking video. See ya!